Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending ACAM's eMed Talk with Mr. Dwayne Hall on the age of virtual medicine in 2020 and beyond. Mr. Hall's presentation today is very interactive, and attendees are encouraged to submit questions using the chat box. Questions will be addressed throughout the presentation with a longer question and answer period at the end. Registrants can expect to receive a recording of this presentation with 2 to 3 business days via email. Moderating today is Dr. Alan Green. Dr. Green is a board-certified family physician currently in private practice at the Center for Optimum Health in Los Angeles. His practice focuses on areas such as longevity medicine, immune enhancement and balancing, allergy and environmental medicine, and nutrition. Dr. Green has over 20 years of experience working in integrative healthcare setting with various practitioners of complementary and alternative healthcare and has been an active member of ACAM. Presently, he serves on the board of directors and education committee. Welcome, Dr. Green. I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Katie. And it's a pleasure to moderate this webinar today, and I'm honored to introduce our main speaker, Dwayne Hall. I've known Dwayne a few years now, and I've watched him as he has developed and fine-tuned his and become the CEO of this new company called VIVE, which is a telemedicine company, and that's what the topic of today's webinar is about. Dwayne has had many years of experience in various types of technologies and internet-based and cybersecurity, and he'll go into that a little bit more in his talk, but let's not waste any time and have Dwayne go from here.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dr. Green. I do appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone coming in this evening in order to allow me to have this time with you. You know, it's an exciting subject for me. It's as Dr. Green has said, it's what we've spent the last couple of years really developing, which is a what we believe to be a leading edge telehealth platform that really reflects the needs of both patients as well as physicians at this time, and we'll get further into not really talking about our platform per se, but just talking about telemedicine and the history of it and where it's going. So let me go ahead and begin showing my screen here, and you'll be able to and then we'll walk through this. Great. All right, so I want to talk about what really telemedicine is. There are conflicting viewpoints on what telemedicine really is, and that really has to do with the fact that telemedicine has been around for quite some time. Going back to the 1940s when the first telemedicine application came into the market, it was centered on transmitting radiology images over telephone lines. And then in the 1950s, it graduated to teleradiology. And then in the 60s and late 50s, rather into the 60s, with the explosion of film and television and the realization that images could be broadcast around the world, telemedicine really started to hit its stride, and the first adopters of it were really first responders that were utilizing it in order to transmit, EKG results and data, tracking firefighters doing very intense fires, and then the true first adopters were the military. And the military utilizing telemedicine in order to be able to monitor soldiers in the field in remote places, and then it became applicable in the 70s to rural communities, and then slowly the evolution began. So if you speak with someone and you ask them what is telemedicine, and sorry, let me just back up. These are I just jumped into the first screen. These are our topics that we're going to cover today. What is telemedicine? I'm sorry. Yeah, and how is telemedicine now in the 21st century moving and moving beyond COVID-19? How is it shaping patient expectations, and how is it creating opportunities? What is the future of telemedicine? So I'm sorry, I just kind of jumped ahead. Again, the data standard is what we talked about, and understanding that telemedicine now going to a data standard is that it's just a HIPAA compliant connection between the doctor and the patient, and it goes back to that those origins, which were very simplistic, advanced at the time, but relatively simplistic for today's standards. And many still see those standards as being what telemedicine is, but telemedicine really is not the connection, a HIPAA compliant connection between a doctor and a patient, with the only defining standard being that it's secure connection and they're not in the same physical location. That is not really telemedicine. Telemedicine should be, and is evolving to be, an enhanced and focused engagement on patient physician engagement, focused on prevention, collaboration, tracking, wellness, and then ensuring broader outcomes that include collaboration across multiple disciplines within medicine, and then also having streamlined access to care. That's how we see telemedicine within our company. That is how the market is evolving to see telemedicine, with the emergence of new technologies literally on a daily basis. The landscape of telemedicine is always shifting. So for those who understand telemedicine to just really be that, I got onto a Skype or I took a telephone call with a patient, I entered something into their chart at some point in time and I called in a prescription, that is really not telemedicine. There are companies out there that have a more advanced version of that, such as Teladoc and Heal, and some others who really arrange for that HIPAA compliant connection. But what they're really working to do is to drive a patient, or rather a physician, into your home in order to deliver you services. And once again, that's fine, and that is very helpful, and that is where the future is going. But truly, telemedicine is a wraparound, comprehensive approach to virtual care. How's telemedicine really shaping patient outcomes and creating business opportunities is really very fascinating to look at. Contrary to what many doctors believe, studies do show that patients do enjoy telemedicine for a multitude of reasons, most of which, I should say, drive to convenience, increased accessibility, but if it's controlled, as it can be, then it is a win-win for both the physician as well as for the patient. When it's done and managed properly, patients can't abuse it, and it becomes a very helpful tool for physicians to manage patient flow, patient care and engagement, as well as increase access to their patients for the purposes not only business, but also extending care. Patients, as a rule, do report they have diminished anxiety because of the increased access. A good example of that would be those who suffer from chronic illnesses. I remember years ago wanting to travel with my brother, who has since passed, but had ongoing issues with his heart, and traveling was just so very difficult because he was always concerned about having access rather to a physician, someone who had access to his chart, who could give him a prescription, and that really very much shaped his lifestyle and limited his options in today's environment. And even though this was 15, 18 years ago, not that long ago. In today's environment, those constraints really don't exist. A patient can really enjoy continuity of care and ready access to not only their physician, but other physicians within a given footprint that can provide them urgent support, even though they may not be their primary care physician. But even if it's just dealing with a primary care physician, if in more advanced telemedicine platforms such as the one that we have developed, VIVE, the patient has access to not only that physician, but that physician's staff. All the medical records are there within the platform related to that patient. There's a continuity of care that's ensured, and the ability to be able to support that patient in a multitude of ways really is very comforting for many patients, which does help increase retention of patients, which is a benefit to the physicians. It helps to increase engagement with the patient, which does increase touch points, again, supporting retention. And it does also drive business, quite frankly. It drives increased engagement, means more business for the physician. So it is a multiple bottom line impact, not only financially, but also in patient satisfaction, which of course works to support the doctor's reputation and grows their practice over the course of time. For physicians, practicing telemedicine really does have some amplified benefits. The reduction of operating costs. If you shift your practice to more of a virtual platform, what does that do for your office expenses? What does that do for your staffing expense? What does that do for a host of things? If you have a hybrid model where you are working partially within an office and the other time you are operating outside of that virtually, again, what does that do for your patient engagement? What does that do for your operating costs? The flexibility of hours is one of those things when surveyed, when physicians rather are surveyed, one of the top things that they reference, especially those who have been hospitalists, who've now become the emerging term virtualists. One of the top things that they point to is this notion, or rather this reality of greater flexibility and lifestyle impact. And as we have an emerging culture where work-life balance is very important for all of us, this becomes a very valued thing within the community of practitioners. If we to talk about patient expectations and what are they and how are they evolving over the course of time, we look at our platform, for example, and this is a somewhat of a shameless plug, but it's a great example to illustrate patient expectations as well as the expectations of physicians in the more advanced realm of emerging technologies around telemedicine, and what patients are really expecting on an ongoing basis is truly a concierge experience. When they survey patients and they ask them, what is it that you're looking for, they're expecting that they can have within relative, reasonable degree of standard, but they're expecting to have rather consistent access to their physician without delay. Now that part of that is just a large cultural shift because we live in an on-demand society, from groceries to now Netflix and everything else that we're all using to remain sane during this time of being shuttered in. But that those are very real, rather cultural shifts that have taken place over the last 5 to 8 years, really. You see an explosion in this on-demand mentality emerging, especially here in the U.S. and also in other first world economies, right? And that is not medicine and healthcare is not immune to that. And I would say that because of its importance, it's actually at the top of the list, is ranked one of the most highly sought after thing, which is this availability to care, which is not limited to due to geographical constraints and also hours. And so it is not to suggest that a patient wants to have a doctor available to them 24 hours a day, but they do want to have less wait times, more efficient access, access to the medical records, and access to care. So if you look at these screens, they really do represent, to a large degree, the expectations of patients in that they can be able to filter different types of specialists at ease. I need a dermatologist. I need a pediatrician. I need someone to talk to about whatever it may be. I have a blemish. I have a concern. I need a gastroenterologist, or at least I think I do. They want to be able to find these things rather seamlessly. There are platforms out there that, like a ZocDoc, for example, that is, the equivalent of Yelp, but for the healthcare community, that whereby you can go on and you can look and you can find and you can search for and then make an appointment. But that is once again driving business into your office. That is not a virtual experience. And what patients do want is they want to have the convenience that allows them to manage their otherwise complex lives. And so if you're a working professional and you have the challenges that most of us do, which are our loved ones, kids, or spouses, or partners, our businesses, our business concerns, and then the various other things that are being imposed upon us. Making it to the doctor is really very challenging, and that is a challenge whether you're a low income because you can't miss work, or whether or not you are a high income owner, a worker rather, who is burdened by the responsibilities of their career. And it is a shared norm amongst various socioeconomic brackets that make it into the doctor is a challenge. And so one of the things that challenges many doctors is how to manage retention given these constraints, and patients are looking for the ease of access and ease of convenience. And so if you look here, doctors want to have flexibility. They want to have access to being able to manage their patients more easily. If they are going to have these conditions of greater access imposed upon them, the challenge is in the marketplace that there are few options out there in order to support them, but nonetheless, demand is increasing. And so when you look at these screens, you can see that we have designed this with the patient as well as practitioner in mind, so that really for the patient, there is a physician's office in the palm of their hand. For the doctor, their office is in the palm of their hand. And this really is, all kidding aside, although I'm talking about our platform, this really is a snapshot of what the future holds for telemedicine, because patients really do want to have the power of being able to connect with their physician on an ongoing basis, connect within that physician's network on an ongoing basis. Studies show that the physicians, or rather patients, want to remain with their primary care physician. And the problem is that they also want to connect within that primary care physician's network. It is very difficult to manage that within today's world. And patients do want to have that engagement within this trusted circle that begins with their primary care physician, at the top of that. And so imagine a world in which a patient could come into a platform and say, who would Dr. Green have me see for my derm issues? Who would Dr. Green have me see for what I believe to be my issues related to my leg or my back, and without having to ping Dr. Green directly, they can go into his network and see who it is that he trusts and with whom he works, and he can track that engagement so that he is truly providing a white glove concierge experience, all being facilitated through technology and coming into the palm of his hand. And that's the place in which we stand right now as it relates to telemedicine, from it having gone from, hey, I don't have to go in and I can call my doctor on his cell phone and he can call in a prescription, to I really can get preventive care, I can get wellness guidance, I can get prescriptions, I can get increased engagement with my physician and my physician staff and his or her network in a way that I've never been able to do so before. And these advanced technological tools are being used at my disposal and also at his in order to be able to treat me rather 24 hours a day. Because even if I cannot reach the doctor, at a moment's notice, I can certainly do something beyond just calling his or her service, shooting off an email that may sit for 2 days. I can actually engage, submit a request, and that request can roll about throughout his staff until someone can get to me in a more timely fashion. So this is the state of telemedicine now. These are reflective of the expectations, the growing expectations of patients that are going to pull, I believe, all practitioners into telemedicine here in the near future, and especially as we live within the realities of COVID-19. Telemedicine is being imposed upon every practitioner, whether they like it or not. And with the explosive growth that we've seen within telemedicine over the last several years, it being a small number, being that in 2003 you had roughly 68% growth from the dawn of telemedicine to that point. Yes, 68% growth. Since 2003 till 2017, there's been a 340% growth. They expect that in 2022, roughly 579,000 or so physicians, these are according to a study that Kaiser did, physicians will be practicing telemedicine in one form or another. And this is a pre-COVID-19 study that was done and just released in September of last year. And so if you now take into account these extraordinary events that we're living through right now, you can well imagine that those numbers are going to greatly explode over the course of time. And we're going to see that a hockey stick curve. We're going to see not this slow curve, but we're going to see this real upshot of the embrace of telemedicine by practitioners and also the seeking of it by patients.
Dwayne, I'm just like to interrupt for a moment. I forgot to mention before you started speaking that if anyone who's attending would like to ask a question, there's a chat room that you should be able to type your question in, and so that we can try to get to those questions towards the end of the webinar. Okay, back to you.
All right, thank you. I do believe that that over the course of time, telemedicine will no longer be called telemedicine. It's already an antiquated term. You have technologies that are coming into the market that are really mind-blowing. 3D virtual technologies. You have blockchain. Blockchain is technology that's used for things such as Bitcoin and other digital technologies. And what they do is they make sure that, really, in essence, that what you're receiving is indeed authentic. That file, that digital file, has not been corrupted in any way. So imagine, and this is happening now, that your medical records are being transmitted utilizing this very advanced cryptography, this very advanced encrypted technology that allows for your files to remain intact and never be corrupted. You will see a nosedive of insurance fraud, medical fraud, and other things taking place because of these advanced technological tools. And you'll see, and we're going to see the emergence of secure cloud technology so that your medical record truly can follow you anywhere. We have some of that within our platform. You will see that advancing over the course of time, where truly everything that you've ever wanted to know and have about yourself and your family will be in encrypted cloud storage and easily disseminated anywhere in the world by a point and a click. The use of 3D imaging and those things will greatly come into play. And you're going to see the advent of artificial intelligence. That's certainly going to take place. You see it now. You can call into, or rather, you can pick up or go into certain platforms, and you have bots who are and that's all AI. That's all artificial intelligence, where you're inputting basic symptoms, and a bot is basically spitting out what it believes, the platform believes that you need or have, and then referring you into a doctor. But what's interesting about that is that it's never going to take place, or rather replace, a physician. Studies, once again, being database studies, show that patients like people. Patients want to engage with a person. You're talking about someone's health. You're not buying a car. And studies further show that it is really related to the type of patient. If I'm calling in about the fact that I believe I have the flu, engagement with a bot might be okay. If I'm calling in because I've had a history of heart disease, of course, engaging with a bot, no matter how sophisticated it's told to me that it is just not going to suffice. And so, back again, it's being driven back to the primary care physician and to that personalized engagement. Interestingly enough, when asked, patients believe that the telemedicine visit is more intimate than the in-office visit in some ways, because of the fact that at that time, the physician is very much just zeroed in on the patient. And when a patient walks into a physician's office, they may see 6 or 7 other people waiting. Physicians have to manage their time in the office just like they do through a telemedicine platform. But the optics of understanding that other people and seeing, rather, or other people are waiting for that physician. If the physician is anyway rushed, or even appears rushed, or maybe is not, the perception is if the appointment ends sooner than when the patient wants it to end or believes it should have ended, they attribute it to the fact that the physician had to move on to the next patient. And in a telemedicine engagement, when the appointment ends, studies show, interestingly enough, the patient feels satisfied because the patient felt as though they had some measure of control as to when that appointment ended. And they saw the doctor being just completely focused on them because there's no other, as they say, physical artifacts, no other evidence to the contrary, such as a patient waiting physically the day passed in the waiting room for the doctor. So patients do have this greater sense of satisfaction, interestingly enough, and fulfillment through a virtual platform as opposed to when they come into the office, which is a very, very significant find for those doctors who are high touch point, as they should be, and who want to make sure that they're extending the very best personalized care to their patients. And so for doctors who are reluctant and reticent, saying, well, I don't know if this is for me because I don't want to offend my patient who's accustomed to coming in to see me. I don't want to seem aloof. I don't want to, in any way alienate my patients. This is really comforting factoid because it, is quite to the contrary. And then moving into post-COVID, I do believe that the majority of doctors, whether they like it or not, are going to be pushed into this state of concierge medicine. Again, it goes to a point that I was making earlier. More and more patients are expecting this and demanding it. And concierge used to mean one thing in particular. It's one of those other terms that if you ask different people what it means, they will all say different things. Typically is perceived as, extraordinarily high fee for this personalized service, 24 hours a day, I take your call type of arrangement. And although that generally is the case, the term and its definition and the interaction by extension between patient and the physician has shifted as you see more and more models emerging around this notion of concierge medicine. Our platform is VIVE Concierge because we are working to impress upon the patient that you have really a wraparound approach to your care, and that truly is a concierge experience, somewhat on demand. It is not on demand to the detriment of the physician, but to the comfort of the patient, and that they can submit requests and be assured that through the use of the technology that their request is going to be brought to the attention of many within that physician's staff, and that you are assured that the physician knows and is aware of what's going on with you, on a consistent basis, and that really is concierge experience. And so, as we move towards 2021 and beyond, we're going to see more and more reliance upon telemedicine and the concierge experience. Again, whether you want to call it that or not as a physician, is really what you're going to be providing to your patients. It's going to be a slow turn before, unfortunately, I believe, before society here resumes to normal, and before we get back into offices. But one of the interesting studies that was recently done by Forbes, and it said the top 34 industries that will be impacted by COVID-19 in a positive way, what won't change, and literally number one on the list was telemedicine. That telemedicine was going to be the big winner out of COVID-19. It was not going to go away. And again, I was going to see a hockey stick growth curve, in that the adoption was going to remain. And it's because people become enlightened as to its ease of use, its convenience, the value proposition, physicians as well as patients. When you can be at home and be as productive, or be away and be as productive, even more so efficient, equally as profitable, because you've diminished your costs and increased your revenue amongst yourself and your staff in dealing with your patient pool. And then you have the benefit of growing your practice virtually outside of the geographic constraints, only limited by the various states in which you are licensed. It becomes quite an attractive proposition. And so I do believe that telemedicine is going to be here to stay. It is certainly going to grow. It's interesting how the numbers break down for physicians that are 55 and older. 60% of them, when polled, said that they would adopt telemedicine within the next 2 years. 45 to 54, 70%. 35 to 44, 77%, and 25 to 34 years of age, 74% polled that said that yes, in the next 2 years they see themselves becoming increasingly virtualist. And so these are really very impressive numbers, and they're really very sobering about the shifting landscape that we find ourselves and the direction of telemedicine, from it having gone from such basic and humble beginnings to this widespread and explosive adoption, not only here in the U.S., but literally globally. And so, it's a fascinating time to be in this space. It's a fascinating opportunity. It's one of those times in which, there is a lot of negative things. There are a lot of negative things that are taking place right now, but the good that will come out of this are increased innovation. and adoption, which will help us arrest other issues that will come to bear here in the States, come to present rather, and globally. And I do believe that the use of telemedicine is one of those things that will forever shift the landscape. So I'll end it here, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to delve into more granular answers beyond what I was able to offer during that brief presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Dwayne. We have some questions.
Okay.
And some of the question, there's one question about medical liability. The concern that not examining the patient might miss something, and how is that brought in? How do you reconcile distancing yourself from the patient physically and how that might affect your making a good diagnosis?
Yeah, let me try to get back to my camera, and I will here in a moment. But let me answer this while I fumble about. The law is really very clear in that it does protect physicians a great deal in being able to. The law says that and let me focus. I was sorry, I was distracted because I was trying to look for my camera to re-enable it, and I'll get to it in a minute. But let me answer this first. Focus. The law is really very interesting in that it does a very good job of protecting the physicians. The law says that the ability to see the patient is the equivalent of a physical examination. It is a good faith examination, and that is sufficient. And so what you will find is that you really are greatly protected by the existing laws that are on the books, quote unquote, at this time. And there's really not a great deal of liability there. And even now in COVID, the laws have been even more relaxed because of obvious reasons. There's just an ability to have that physical engagement.
I'd like to just chime in here a little bit, just about my experience in working with telemedicine recently. I've had an interesting consultation job that I've been going to China for the last couple of years, about every few months, and seeing patients there. And obviously, with what's going on in the world right now, I've had to stop my trips to China, and I've been doing telemedicine, and I'm getting pretty much just about the same things done now. It saved me, a 12-hour flight back and forth, and the patient too. In when I was going there, the patients were having to fly in from all over China to Beijing, and now they can stay in their city. And their doctors can be in another city, and then I'm a consultant, and so it's really, for me, that has been wonderful. But I also, personally, I have a second home, and that I'd like to be there more, and now I can practice medicine. I don't have to just do it from the office. So it's, for me, telemedicine is going to really help improve my quality of life, and I'm really glad about that. Now,
that's a big deal for physician burnout as well, right? Which is a big deal right now. It's an ongoing discussion point, right? And being able to shift from one's environment has shown, statistically, that there's just an overall improvement of just balance in a physician's life. So to your point.
Yeah. Now, for patients who want to do telemedicine, what steps do they have to go through? Do they to become, to go into the platform? What does it require of a typical patient who gets involved in a telemedicine platform?
It's pretty seamless. If they have downloaded any type of software before, it's literally a software download, and they, I mean, every platform is different. Our platform works to collect a good amount of information for the physicians, and so they will fill out their paperwork, fill out the various electronic forms within the platform, and then that's simply it. It's just really downloading and inputting information, and that's it.
And it requires them to become a member. Will there be a cost for the patient?
There's a monthly cost, as they would pay with any software, monthly licensing costs, and they pay that to the platform, and then they of course pay the physician for the physician's time through the platform on a per minute basis. For physicians that take insurance, they can bill their insurance. For physicians, like many physicians within integrative medicine that just take cash, their credit card is on file, and they are paid at the completion of the appointment by the patient.
Yeah. Now, when a patient wants to make an appointment with a physician or a practitioner, how do they go about that? Do they just click on the day, the time, if it's an opening? Is there some screening process that allows them to determine how much time they make their appointment for?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. So it's all managed within the platform. So if you, as the physician, Dr. Green, you would build out your schedule however you want on a weekly basis. You can change it however you want daily. And as patients come in, they will get a snapshot of your schedule, as you've said it, and they will be able to make a request. You either confirm or reject the appointment, and you can reschedule them to another time. So all the scheduling is done within the platform.
Okay. Yeah, because I can just imagine there's some patients who'd like want to make an appointment every day of the week, and
absolutely. That's true. It's white coat syndrome, right?
Well, white coat syndrome, that usually means your blood pressure goes up when you go to the doctor.
I thought that
less of that, because if you get your health care at home, you'll be more relaxed and less.
That's precisely right. That's right. That's
the opposite. Now, until recently, it really billing and getting third-party paying insurance to cover telemedicine has been not as easy, and especially now with COVID, Medicare has changed the laws about that. You might want to just talk a little bit about how that works for doctors who still do insurance billing as opposed to cash paying doctors.
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways in which to address that. One, the patient can submit a super bill. One of the things that we remind patients is that most patients have a deductible, and so whatever they spend out of pocket within the platform can go towards their yearly deductible. Many of them have high yearly deductibles, and so at the completion of every appointment, there is an invoice that is sent to the patient. That patient can use that in order to submit to their insurer to meet their yearly deductible. That's one. The platform does not manage the billing to the insurers. The doctors are left to do that on their own, because doctors sometimes do it more efficiently and better with their staff. And so within the platform, staff can have administrative privileges as well in order to support the billing. And then we will be producing super bills as well for the patients to be able to as well submit to their insurers for reimbursement.
Okay.
But under COVID-19, we have seen that there's been a shift to actually more relaxed reimbursement standards and not more more stringent. And so I've not seen that there's been more challenges. I've seen there's actually been greater ease of reimbursement.
Okay. Let's talk about the integrative physician. You know, this webinar, we're reaching likely practitioners of integrative medicine. How does telemedicine help that aspect of healthcare, you know, in some way more especially than just, you know, typical Western medicine, let's say?
That's a great question, because so the ability to actually have to focus on prevention and tracking and provide guidance around wellness is increased, because there's just greater bidirectional access for the ability from the doctor to reach out more consistently with greater ease to the patient, and the patient to be able to reach the doctor. You know, one of the things that we're seeing right now in this discussion about COVID-19, as we live within this era of COVID-19 rather, is, you know, why is it some people are sicker than others, right? There's a number of factors, right? Age, a host of things, but in large part is prevention or lack of prevention, right? And just how certain people have just not been as diligent about that, right? And so when we look at our platform being able to offer not only, you know, Western medicine protocols to support a patient, the ability to have complementary and alternative treatments as a part of their medical jacket, just as anything else would be, a wellness center, so that you know, you as a physician can send your patients you know, articles and information that you want them to have, perhaps during flu season, for example, about how to avoid taking the flu shot if you really don't want to take the flu shot. I'm sure you have a good deal of advice you can provide a patient on how to stay healthy, right? And the ability to be able to focus on prevention, and then and track them using technology, being able to use a Fitbit or their Apple Watch in order to be able to see, are they reducing their weight, or has their BMI come down? You know, what's going on with their blood pressure? What's going on with their heart rate? All these things are really, you know, tools that should be embraced by all physicians, but you see more engagement between integrative physicians and their patients than you do Western doctors, who appear to more so focus on, you know, the urgent care approach to medicine. And our platform is greatly skewed towards practitioners such as yourself, who want to have more engagement, more consistent engagement with their patients, focused on not only their urgent care needs, but also prevention and long-term objectives.
Okay. So, you know, how much control does the physician have in how the platform can be developed to match that physician's practice? In other words, you know, there's like the patient portal. How many different things can the patient look into, you know, in their chart? Like, what kind of control does the doctor have within the platform of what their patient can and can't see, and that?
Yeah, so the patient really gets to see their care plan. So their plan of care, any information that they've provided on onboarding, family history, blood type, anything that might change over the course of time, my weight changes, whatever those things are. So they have access to those things. They certainly don't see physician notes. They don't see the orders that are entered. They don't have access to other fields or parts of the medical record that really are meant only for practitioner to practitioner. So the access to medical jacket is it's more than what they would normally get, but it is not comprehensive. So that the records that a physician needs to keep detailed and for themselves and for their staff regarding the patient are somewhat protected.
How easily does being on the platform combine with maybe that physician's personal website, you know, how much of their website can go onto their platform so that the patient has the full experience of what that doctor can do. You know, I think many doctors, for example, integrative doctors, offer nutritional supplements and herbs and that kind of thing. Is there a place on the platform for a store, or
there is? Yeah, there is. There's a wellness hub, and that wellness hub is we're you know, consistently, it's technology platform, so we're always, it's iterative and it's ever evolving, right? And the wellness hub is intended to be and is the patient's hub for exactly that. All things related to that patient's interests, and where they can go and pull down articles, information, review a podcast that was done by a physician that's of interest to them, read an article, and also make purchases. And so within that hub, they'll be able to go, and if a physician says you should try whatever that thing, whatever it might be that you might suggest to a patient, you can place some of your supplements within the hub. The physician can, and other patients, that patient as well as other patients can purchase directly from you. Now, the good thing about this is that, you know, not only you servicing your patients, but other patients on the platform, consumers who just happen to download the software, who want to find a physician, will be able to find not only that physician, such as yourself, but also anything that you, any materials, podcasts, articles, as well as supplements that you place within the hub will be directly linked to you.
Okay. I think those are all the questions that I have written down here. We have just a few more minutes left. Is there anything you didn't mention yet about your experience with telemedicine that
no, I think, listen, I believe that, you know, as I've stated before, I believe that telemedicine is going to dominate the landscape. I think brick and mortar, even hospitals are trying to figure out a way to downsize their physical footprint.
I think we lost you there. Hello? Well, Dwayne, I don't know if you can hear me, but you froze and we don't hear, your video froze and I don't hear any voice. Katie, are you still with us?
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you to Mr. Hall and to Dr. Green for joining us today. It was a very informative presentation, and we look forward to hearing more about this in the future. Thank you for our attendees, and we invite you to join us next Tuesday for another complimentary collaboration cures presentation with Dr. Sasha Gomanak on vitamin D, COVID, sleep, airway, immune connection. You can find those details and register for that on acam.org. And then we also have more learning opportunities. You can visit our website at acam.org, our YouTube channel, or find out news on our Facebook, and get up to date on any webinars that are coming up in the future. Thank you, Dr. Green. Was there anything else?
No, I think that's it for me.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you next Tuesday. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.